Okay, I want to introduce the next speaker we've got for you, the gentleman that was up earlier giving the opening prayer, Jerry Robinson. Now, Jerry is the president and founder of Jerry Robinson Ministries International. He's an ordained minister. He's a published author. His book, The Bankruptcy of Our Nation. He's also a trained economist. He's currently working on a brand new documentary that exposes the Federal Reserve. And tonight he wants to take a few minutes of your time to talk about a topic near and dear to your heart, healthcare reform.
How's everybody doing tonight on a very wet evening? You don't sound too excited to me. How excited are you out here? I want to say a special thank you to Pat Campbell and to Nancy Parsons, Tricia LeCount, all the organizers of this Tea Party movement, the 912 Project, just doing a fantastic job of organizing it. Thanks to all of you for coming out in the wet to be here in support of a very important movement. Today, in the nation, we have a debate surrounding the idea of universal health care. It has reached a fever pitch. And in these brief few minutes, I want to discuss why I believe universal health care is a poor idea. How many agree? The very first reason I think that we should automatically admit that universal health care is a bad idea is because we cannot trust the government with a credit card. In 1965, the politicians told us that Medicare would cost $9 billion by 1990. The real cost ended up being $66 billion. President Barack Obama's current universal health care plan is stated to cost $1.6 trillion. But if we base it upon the typical expenditures that the government has done, when they say $1 trillion, what do they normally mean? 4, 5, 6, possibly even $10 trillion. America can simply not afford universal health care. It is simply impossible. We already have a national debt of nearing $12 trillion. Last week, the Congress is asking to raise the debt ceiling to $12 trillion just to cover the national debt. We have an entitlement crisis that totals $60 trillion in unfunded obligations, and the government still has no real solutions to fix it. It's time for good, hard-working Americans to say enough is enough to the Washington elite. How many of you agree? Our leaders in Washington need to hear we the people loud and clear. They need to hear us say enough. Common sense tells us that before we take on more spending, more government spending for health care, we should first fix the problems that we have. We have a broken system in Social Security. We have a broken system in Medicare and Medicaid. We have broken systems in other ways. We must deal with these problems first. The second reason that I think universal health care is a poor idea is because the government cannot even give away free money effectively. Remember this cash for clunkers idea that they came out with, where we're going to give out money to anybody who trades in their car? It's basically been a lot of broken promises and a lot of inefficiencies with this program. It's demonstrated that government bureaucracies fail at the most basic level. Who in their right mind would entrust this federal government with managing the most precious asset all of us have, and that is our health? Our federal government has a very long track record of failure when it comes to being efficient and to being effective. Imagine that I have wrecked every single car that I've driven. Just imagine this with me now for a minute. I'm a terrible driver. Every single time I've gotten to the car and put the key into the ignition and driven, I've driven right into a brick wall. I've totaled the car. Then I walk up to you and I say, "Can I borrow your keys?" What do you say? And then I say, "Well, no, really, I want to borrow your keys and I want you to come and I want you to bring your brand newborn and put him in the back seat. He'll be safe in the car seat." Come on, what are you going to say? No! That's exactly what government is asking for us to do. Trust us. Even though we've wrecked everything we've touched, just trust us one more time. At a point in our nation when our nation's debt is skyrocketing, it's absolutely impossible. Finally, the third reason why I think universal health care is a poor idea is because universal health care is a poor idea in and of itself. Adopting universal health care and socialized medicine is not a sign of progress. It's not an indication that our nation is advancing. Instead, it's a step backwards. It's not a step forwards. I love what the late Paul Harvey once said when he said they have gun control in Cuba and they have universal health care in Cuba. Why do they want to come here? Well, the reason they want to come here is because of the many benefits of American ingenuity and free market competition that has provided our nation with becoming the most amazing nation on the face of the planet economically. But socialized medicine seeks to undermine and destroy free market competition and American ingenuity. The truth is that nations who have adopted universal health care programs have found that these programs cost much more than they had anticipated originally. Consider Great Britain, for example. Their adoption of socialized medicine has led to health care costs taking up the majority of the government's annual budget. The National Health Care Service in Great Britain employs how many people? 1.4 million people. It's the third largest employer in the world, behind the Red Army of China and the Indian National Railways. The bureaucratic layers are so thick that the managers and administrators of the Universal Health Care Plan in Great Britain vastly outnumber the doctors and nurses. And maybe this is why our spendthrift government is so excited about getting this program in place, because it provides more government jobs. Who's excited about that in this place this evening?
Not us.
You excited about more government jobs?
No.
When a recent poll was conducted in Great Britain regarding the efficiency of this healthcare system, they found that only 43% considered their healthcare system excellent. And maybe it had something to do with the waiting times. For example, in Britain, the average waiting time for a cataract surgery was 8 months. A hip replacement takes about 11 months, and a knee replacement takes 12 months. By contrast, our current system, which many claim is broken, only requires 5% of Americans to wait more than 4 months for an elective surgery. Clearly, socialized medicine is not the solution that is being touted. Instead, it's quite possibly an attempt to erode the free market capitalism that made this nation great and to replace it with socialism. You know what the problem with socialism is, don't you? The problem with socialism is that eventually you run out of other people's money. If socialism comes full force into America, it will come straight through the ballot box. And those who are calling for bigger government apparently do not understand one thing. The government that is big enough to give you everything that you want is also just as big enough to take everything away. And what our government doesn't seem to understand is that you cannot make the poor richer by making the rich poorer. It's simply impossible. Our government's track record of mismanaging the people's money speaks louder. Their track record, their history of mismanaging the people's money speaks volumes louder than any well-rehearsed rhetoric pouring out of a politician's mouth in front of a television camera. If the government truly wants to put more money in the people's wallets, the best way to do it is to leave it there in the first place. How many agree?
Yeah.
So those are my reasons why universal health care is a very bad idea, and I think many of you would probably agree with that. I think my time is up, so I'm going to move on and move to the next speaker. Before I do, I want to encourage you. Pat had mentioned that we had a book that was out available, Bankruptcy of Our Nation. They're back at the back along with the DVD. I want to give these to you. If you go back to our booth, I want you to come back and say, I want these two things. I want that book and that DVD. What do I want from you in return? Help me get a documentary about this Federal Reserve exposed. We want to expose the Federal Reserve for what it is, and you'll get a tax deduction for doing it. Right back here in the back at our table, come back and ask for these two for free. I want to put them in your hands, and I thank you so much, and thank you for coming out in the rain, and God bless you.